Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the School Building Committee meeting for Thursday, August 10, 2023. Thank you all for joining us. Our first item on the agenda is approval of the July 27 minutes. Is there a motion to approve, Steve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, is there a second? Kathy, thank you. Are there any corrections or updates? Okay, seeing none, then all in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, that brings us then to the opportunity for public input. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the committee? Okay, seeing none, we will move on then. That brings us then to our contractor, architect, and OPM update. And I think what we'll do again is follow the list of kind of the hot topics that need completion. The first item on there is the retention basin. So I don't see Newfield here yet. So I know Adam or Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, would you do you want me to share screen the list of topics, or do you want to
That's fine. And I see Newfield is just joining the meeting. So I see Newfield has just joined us. We are just getting to the topics for updates right now. The first item is the retention basin. So I don't know, Richard, you want to kind of take off with that, or Adam?
I can, yes. So with your permission, Adam. Hang on.
are you pulling up a document, Richard?
Yeah, so let me see if I can pull up CCD 19.
While he's doing that, so we had a meeting on August 1st. TSKP, myself, Principal McCoy, Newfield, as well as the civil engineer, landscape architect, and Derek Delage with the town to basically review the proposed scope of work that Richard is pulling up with the CCD. The meeting went fairly well. The general understandings that came out in terms of what Fuss & O'Neill is requiring in terms of layers to remove and testing to be discussed. There was appeared to be consensus as to what was being requested. So if you've got that now, Richard, you can screen share.
I'm sharing now. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the construction change directive number 19. It was issued on.
Actually, what I'm seeing actually is the minutes from the meeting.
Oh.
So I think Adam put that up. Okay, Richard, you want to put it, if you're going to talk about the CCD?
Okay.
There we go.
How's
There we
this?
go.
Okay,
Now we see it.
so this is CCD 19. It was issued on August the 4th. It was signed by me and also by Randy. And basically it's a document that says you are to proceed with the work, and for any disputed items, you should document time and material required to perform the corrective work. And then a change order could be implemented from that if the cost is justified. And it may be justified. So what this document has is a memo that was written by Ron Baumingen. He's the civil engineer from Fuss & O'Neill who met us at the site. And basically his memo had five bullet points in it. Starting with draining the pond, and we didn't say exactly how you need to drain the pond, but that was up for Newfield to implement. And I know because I saw photographs of a pipe that was connected, or a hose that was connected to the pond, and it was connected to a pump, and it was discharging water downhill. The second bullet point was erosion control. And the discussion at the meeting was that the best way to see which areas of erosion are insufficient, that the vegetation that's around the banks of the pond should be mowed down. And then erosion control measures such as staked silt socks should be put in the retention basin. And we believe that that's an additional scope. And so that item, I put a cloud around that item. That's my cloud making handwriting. And I indicated that that bullet point plus bullet point number 4 really should be part of a proposal request for additional cost. I'll get to the other point 4 in a minute. The third bullet point in Ron's memo was that the top 12 inches of the type 3 soil should be removed. This is remember that there's 24 inches of soil in the bottom of the basin. What Ron indicated was that he recommended that the top 12 inches of the type 3 soil should be removed and stockpiled on the site. And that same material can be reused for the basin side slopes where there has been some erosion, and it can be used as the base for additional plant material. And if we end up with any excess material or any unsuitable material from removing that 12 inches, it could be hauled to the transfer station, which is just down the road a little bit. Derek Delay was at the meeting and he agreed that that would be an appropriate place to truck the excess or unsuitable material. Steps need to be taken to protect the trees that are planted already in the basin by creating a 4-foot radius of soil around the trees to remain. And then Ron recommended that infiltration tests be taken. And his, after discussing it with Derek in the days leading up to this memo, the consensus between Derek and Ron was that the infiltration had to meet 3 inches per hour on the remaining type 3 soil. And we talked a bit about who that testing lab might be. And I believe there are testing labs that are already available for the town to call. And everyone agreed that those testing agents could respond fairly quickly. The fourth bullet point in Ron's memo is that there be some storm discharge improvements. Each of the stormwater riprap aprons, these are where the discharge points are, need to be reconstructed because of the sediment buildup in them. And that they should be further extended down the slope approximately 10 feet into the basin bottom. And then there was a sketch that was done, which I'll show you in a minute. And that stone should be placed to a depth that extends all the way to the subgrade to allow a direct path for storm flow to enter into the subgrade. In my view, that's a redesign or an enhancement to the design. So I believe that is a justifiable additional cost, which should be put into a proposal request for pricing. The last bullet point was reseeding the impacted work area with the specified seed mix that was originally part of the specifications for the project. So here you can see the areas of the riprap aprons that need to be enhanced. Those are those locations. And so basically that's it. And then as the material, oh, and one more point. If the infiltration rates do not meet 3 inches per hour, then the remaining 12 inches of soil needs to be removed. And that's the summary of the recommendations that Ron Baumann made, and those are the notes that are in the CCD. This was issued to Newfield. Newfield, I believe, disagrees with the need to have 12 inches removed. And they, I believe, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they still think that 3 inches is all that's necessary. But if they remove only 3 inches, I still think it's important to have infiltration tests done. And if the tests fail, then they should continue with removing more of the soils. So that's a summary of the CCD. Any
Okay,
questions?
Okay, yeah, Ryan has a question.
Thanks for that, Richard. My understanding is that there's concern or reason to question the extent to which that the area around the detention basin was stabilized properly, and that there were requests for methods, to do that going back weeks and months, that essentially was not abided by. And so now we have sort of the issue that we have, and there may be room for debate around what has caused those issues. I know one of the sort of seemingly sensible working hypotheses is that we have a lot of silt in the basin that came from the surrounding areas. It kind of washed in because it wasn't particularly stabilized. So I guess, could you just explain, maybe it's just for me, maybe others are following it, but it seems that some of these, I guess we'll call them upfits, but the changes in design that you're saying are outside the original scope, that the cost then would be incurred by the town to do. I'm not sure I'm totally following why that makes sense if these are things that are being done to address a problem that was caused by sort of lack of following the original protocols.
That's one of the points of dispute. And so I believe Newfield's position is that they did do erosion control. They took the steps that were necessary to maintain controls to prevent silt from entering into the basin. Subsequently, Ron Bomagen showed me photographs, and I believe he forwarded them to Newfield as well, that refute that position. I believe Derek Delay also subsequently forwarded some photographs. So this needs to be resolved.
So then I guess,
This is Brian at Newfield. I just want to, for the record, state that, the photo that's circulating was a photo that was taken days after we established the slopes, and it was after a torrential rainfall of 6 inches an hour at the site. I mean, the fact that we had a washout there is not that uncommon, given the fact, the type of water that we received in a short amount of time. That the area was addressed and cleaned. I mean, the fact that the photo is being used to create this narrative is it's not right. Just tell me what we did wrong and what's wrong with the basin, and then we'll be more than happy to address it. But to this point, I mean, pointing to one photo after a torrential, it's like making the same comment around the gymnasium when we had water flowing into the gym, and what was going to stop that was because the grass wasn't established. I mean, that's craziness. It's craziness. When you have that type of rainfall in a short amount of time, honestly, I mean, I don't care what you do to the slope that you just built, it's going to wash out, and it did, and nobody's disputing that. But to turn it into, we destroyed this basin is not right. So, I have some questions regarding the CCD and how we're approaching it. I'd like to know, how did Fuss O'Neill arrive at 12 inches of soil to be removed? Why are we removing 12 inches of soil in the entire basin? Why are we retesting infiltration when we already did? We had Coastal out there and they tested infiltration. Why? What do we think the result is going to be different?
If I may, the pond is not infiltrating. And so we need to get it to a point where it will infiltrate. That's why Ron is
Okay,
recommending.
but we got to go further back. Why is it not infiltrating?
It's
We got to solve first before we say plow ahead.
It's silted up. It is silted up, and even in a previous.
But how do we know that, Richard? What test was done to prove that it's silted up? I just want to know. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how we're coming to this conclusion. I'm here to help resolve the issue, but it just seems like it's a lot of crap that's thrown at Newfield. So I just want to clear the air and say we're here to help the situation, but maybe I'm just not the smartest guy in the room. I don't understand what we're doing out here. Why are we extending the riprap aprons? What's the purpose of that, Richard?
We have, let Chris McAvoy has her hand up. Let's.
Well, I just want to know, why are we extending the aprons?
We're extending the aprons and also making them deeper to extend all the way down to the sub base
For what reason?
to allow drainage to enter down, to improve the percolation rate down into the sub base.
Okay.
It's an additional enhancement.
Go ahead, Chris.
Were we not going to core the soil to find out more specifically how much we did have to remove? I recall us talking about that at the last meeting, that we were going to do a core sample. No?
No, I don't believe that that was what we talked about.
You did an
Oh.
infiltration test already on the soil, correct? We have those results. I've seen them. I've seen them. So we have infiltration. I see Adam saying yes. Is that, I mean, I just, so that everyone
Yes,
understands,
so-
we have infiltration rate testing that goes through the first layer and
Yep.
through the second layer.
Yep,
Okay. And what were the results?
that did not pass at either the top layer where nothing's draining, nor at the mid layer. It did appear, if I recall, to be at 5 inches or thereabouts, right at the subgrade. So to kind of rehash what was discussed at the August 1st meeting was the purpose of the removing the first 12 inches and then deep tilling the remaining portion of it is to confirm that that would be sufficient without having to scrape everything out to infiltrate the pond and have percolation go as it should be. Because there was discussion in a proposal by Newfield to scrape only the top 3 inches and see what would happen. Fuss and O'Neill felt that that wasn't sufficient, so the recommended course of action was remove 12 inches, deep till, then do a percolation, because we know the subgrade drains. So if you remove the top layer stuff, that might be the most silted, and you deep
But we
till the
did-
remaining portion.
I
that
follow
might
you
be
to that
sufficient.
point, but we did the infiltration already. We did. the
Right,
test.
untilled, silted top. If you go out there, you see this big cake layer that everyone's pretty unanimously talked at and look at saying, wow, it doesn't go through the big cake layer of soil at the top. So the percolation test you're referring to, we're on top of that layer of crud and then 12 inches down into untilled silted soil. So get rid of the 12 inches, deep till, and then do another percolation test to see if it works. If it does, we're done. So that's what the point of the second set of percolation.
And all because, and this is done on Newfield's dime, because why? What did we do wrong? Are you saying we silted up 24 inches of topsoil? That has,
We
silted
don't
in?
know. We don't know how much is silted up. We suspect it could be as much as 12.
Right, well,
So I guess if I may,
yeah, I
my,
don't understand why.
So I
why
guess
it's
to the-
automatically-
to the question that Brian, I guess, is asking, my understanding, and this is second or third hand, I suppose, just sort of communication inside the walls of town hall here, but I guess I've been hearing for some time that there have been communications, and I think this would be perhaps some of this or a lot of this in writing, not just, conversations and emails and that sort of thing, but actual official correspondence from the town, from our zoning office, inquiring about or expressing concern about the status of erosion controls and site stabilization and asking when that was going to be addressed. I think I've been hearing about that for quite some time. So is it Newfield, you're contending that that wasn't a concern or that wasn't raised, or that everything that for stabilization that you were supposed to do, you followed to a T? Is that what you're saying, Brian?
Yeah, there's an engineer who's on the site, Ben, how regularly after rain events to look at erosion control measures that are in place? Is there not, Weston and Sampson?
Weston and Sampson.
And what do their reports say? They come out to the job to inspect exactly.
And I guess my understanding is that is in fact that some of these reports are saying where are the controls, but maybe I have that wrong.
He does highlight some areas that are continual maintenance issues, but again, as it rains, once it rains, those areas have to be reestablished. For example, behind the playground. He does note some measures within the swales going into the rain garden. But it's tough to get to those areas as it fills back up with water. We did have a good jump on the draining of the pond earlier this week. We were about 18 inches down with 6 inches to go. And then with the rain event on Tuesday morning, we're back to where we were. So we're battling Mother Nature to try to get that thing to drain, or to get it drained so that we can get to the soils.
Okay, Tony has a question.
I'm not so concerned with assigning blame at this point. Well, we will, of course, in the long run, have to determine as part of the negotiations over the finalization of the contract, make these determinations. Right now, what concerns me is we have had these amazing rains. I don't think they're going to be unusual in the future. And the idea that because they were unusual this year, we should get used to the idea of flooding the school or having a pond where we're supposed to have a retention basin. I think that those are untenable assumptions. And I don't know what we need to do about it, but clearly we need to do something about the flow of silt into the pond, and we need to do something to make sure that erosion isn't happening. Now, where we go from that statement, I'm not sure, because I don't really know the answer. I have no clue, but that's where I think we stand.
Mayor, you will have silt flowing into that basin until it's done being a retention basin. I mean, siltation is going to flow into that basin. It's
not to the level that it clogs up every year or two. We have to go through this whole process all over again.
Yeah, you have to maintain it annually.
Maintenance did come up at the site meeting with Derek, and it was specifically brought up with regard to the protocol and the design documents, which, as Brian alluded to, does involve regular testing to make sure it's percolating. And if it's not, then you have to address it. That was understood by the town as part of the ongoing maintenance, because if you want a rain carted with low impact development, that's part of what needs to happen in order to maintain that type of habitat versus just a pile of rocks at the bottom of a pit that drains infinitely well. So that was discussed and that was understood as part of ongoing town maintenance for this type of retention basin.
And I want to say, Adam, though, too, even if you put a ton of rocks at the bottom,
Well,
still have to maintain that. You're still going to get sediment and silt that flows through the drainage system, through your silt chambers, through your pre-treatment, that will get into that basin. It's just the way it works. It's not nothing wrong with it. It's just the way it works.
I believe that's understood by the town. In fact, I believe it's even required according to the planning and zoning site approvals.
Okay. And I agree, Mayor, there will be a time and a place to resolve responsibility for things, but Newfield has proceeded with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of corrective work that we adamantly disagree with. And I just feel like we seem to just blindly go into this basin to try to resolve something without fully understanding, number one, what the issue is, and number two, whether it's going to even work. I mean, Colliers, I don't mean to bring in another project, but my understanding is you guys might have an issue on another project with a retention basin with a soil mix. Can that information sort of be lined up with this to try to figure out what the right solution would be? Does that ring a bell for you guys at all? I'm not putting you on the spot, so you don't have to say it yes or no, but we have a lot of contacts in the site and landscaping business, and my understanding is there could be an issue on another school project with a retention basin.
it's not one of mine, so I don't have any data on that specifically, but I'm not saying that there isn't one.
I'm only bringing it up because maybe there was a solution there that we can explore here, but it just seems, we already have infiltration testing. It doesn't work. Now we're changing the design from 5 to 3. That seems to be okay. We're at what? A little over 1.5 inches now with what's out there, according to the last infiltration test.
Yeah, I believe the top layer was like 0.75, the middle was 1.5 inches. And
Bussin
then
O'Neill was originally at 2, now we're at 3, so I don't know, it just seems like we're throwing darts against the wall at some pretty costly work.
No, we're not throwing darts at the wall. So the decision
It
to
feels
go
like,
to
it
three.
feels like, no, Richard, it really does, it feels like it. Sorry, I'm sorry, but it feels like it, because I'm the guy who's gotta do the work and you know, be directed, you know, by directives to do it. When, you know, it just, there's no substantiation, you've done no testing, you just say the slopes aren't stabilized.
We discussed doing testing when we met in the field over 2 months ago. And we asked for a plan to drain the pond so we could do those tests, and we were pursuing those specific tests. And we never got the plan to drain the pond, and Newfield never went forward with that. So I think that comment needs to end. You, Brian, agreed in an email you sent out back on June 22nd that, quote, within your email, the top 2 to 3 inches of the basin appear to be choked with silty material that is slowing down the drainage process. Since that point, we've met in the field another time. There have been significant meetings. The design team has put forward a CCD that they believe will remedy the situation. That needs to be implemented.
Yeah, the basin has been in operation for just about a year. So, you know, again, you're claiming that Newfield somehow put that.
I would say it hasn't been in operation because it hasn't functioned as it was intended and designed, and it's been silted up. So it's been constructed for a year, but it has not been operating as designed for a year. And I don't think this is the appropriate forum to have any further conversations. A CCD has been issued, and it's CCD.
Yeah, I'm just expressing my opinion here in my words, and everyone else seems to be able to do that. But as soon as I do, it's like, you know, Brian, just be quiet. Fine.
But we've heard you, Brian. So, comments, questions?
Where do we go from here?
So a question to Newfield then. So you are still attempting to drain the pond, and you are still attempting to remove the bottom layers of soil at the bottom of the basin.
Yes.
You had suggested that you would do 3 inches. And I said, if you do 3 inches, it's important that the design team be convinced that that is adequate. You believe it's adequate. The design team believes it's not adequate. So the only way to get past that is to test it after you've removed 3 inches. But you're taking a chance because the infiltration rate may not be adequate at 3 inches. And then you'd have to remobilize and take another 9 inches out. So I made the observation, why not just do the 12 and avoid taking the risk of taking 3? And maybe there's a position of some compromise between the difference. I think the argument boils down to who's responsible for the additional 9. Would that be a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I mean, it's understood that the top 3 inches, we've seen it ourselves, that layer needs to be removed. At that point, an infiltration test is gonna have to be done on that ground. And we see what the results are.
If that's the position you want to take, then I think that we would be okay with that. There is some risk, but Newfield, you guys are big boys. You know what the risk is.
Okay.
So
Okay.
when someone had asked the question about what's the next steps, and essentially it's following that memorandum attached to the CCD. So stabilizing the soils with, silt socks, not stabilizing. Installing the sediment control with the silt socks that's described and pumping out the pond. That's steps 1 and 2. And then once that's done, removing soil and testing as appropriate until the drains as required. That's the next steps.
Oh, Chris, Kiefer and then Mackabo.
Are the silt socks in there now? I think I was sent pictures that never opened or didn't appear on the bottoms of anything. But are the silt socks there now?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
If
This
they are, they've been grown over.
Okay.
There's
My understanding from the meeting on site was that, they said it repeatedly. I think it was three layers of silt socks, one in the ridiculous top position, and then one in the middle and one at the bottom. And it seemed like that was the thing to do immediately. And as I recall, I don't know that it came out this way on that list, but to make sure the vegetation was active, which of course is a big challenge given the season. But that's, those are the second one to me is the biggest missing link, it's the vegetation. And just while I've got the microphone, I feel like, I don't know what the marginal costs are, but it seems to me that the marginal cost of taking out an additional X number of inches has got to make some sense rather than saying, oh, nuts, it didn't work. We should have done it. When you've gone through the effort of pumping and gotten the machinery and gotten the, whatever subcontractors you've got to get. I totally understand it's money and it doesn't go the other way sometimes, but it just seems to me this is the opportunity to actually make sure it's fixed, not to say we did it the way we think it would work, or we did it the way it was shown on the plans that we never really agreed with anyway. We just, as a building committee, I think I can speak for everybody, but correct me, anybody. We want it to work. And I bet most people do, but we really want it to work. And this idea that, oh, okay, so we just have to maintain it periodically. Well, it also seems to me that if we can dig it down further, we'll have to do less maintenance into at least the midterm future. And that has some value to the town as well. And maybe there's something that the town can say, okay, we agree. You just helped us save 4 years or 6 years of maintenance, and here's what that's worth. Anyhow, I just think we need to think about, I wish it was thought more about the marginal costs of taking out another inch, another 5 inches, another 9 inches. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Chris McNamara.
I agree. And to piggyback on what you said, there have been a lot of delays and weather-related delays and unusual things that have happened during this building process. No one will fault anybody for the fact that we built a school during COVID and the incredible supply chain issues that you've had and staff, all kinds of things that have come into it. So the issue about assigning blame, I don't think we're there. I don't want to do that. I want to get it done. And I would hate to have to have everybody come out again to take, 6 or 9 more inches out. And like Chris said, if there's a value to the town from having done that, certainly we'll recognize that going forward. But let's just get it done and not look at, who's going to blame anybody right now.
Okay, thanks.
Richard, does it make sense to attack, like a 10 by 10 area, rip down 12 inches and do the testing? I mean, it's obviously going to take time to drain, keep it dry. We're not in a great cycle right now. Test it and kind of come up with a, then we'll know for sure if it's going to work. I mean, does it have to be, does the first effort need to be the entire bottom of the basin?
Well, I mean, certainly if you think you can do a test in half the area, then you'd have to somehow prevent water from draining down into the lower half in order to do the test in a controlled way. I'd be open to that.
I mean, the test isn't like a multi-day test. It's 1 day test, right? I mean, it's percolation, it's infiltration test.
Correct. And I think they were looking for 3 locations and see how they work. You could take half the area, do percolation test in that area, and you can do a percolation test in the unchanged area, and then you can have some measure of difference in percolation rates.
Okay, we're gonna move on. If there's questions like that, of the technical variety, let, between Newfield and Richard, and we can have those discussions, but I think we'll move on to next item.
May I just
Playgrounds-
quickly ask
oh,
Randy where
yeah.
the water's being pumped? Where it's going?
Newfield,
It's actually a couple of different options, a couple of different places the water is going. First, they were pumping it to use it for irrigation to water the lawns.
Uh-huh.
And the other way was, as suggested by Fuss and O'Neill, using the dry wells to, dig around and get it down into the subsoil.
Okay, thanks.
okay, playground drainage. You have an update? I don't know. Ben or
Yeah,
Ryan?
so as of today, I got photos. They've completed the removal of that granular fill layer that was out of conformance. Installation of stone has been added and mulch has been raked back in with the filter fabric below. The catch basin behind the playground has been reestablished. The sump has been silt that was getting in, that was noted on Weston and Sampson's report this morning, has been removed. So that catch basin has been cleaned, silt sock reinstalled in the entire swale. Has erosion matting installed per Weston and Sampson's request. And the orange fence around the playground is now removed. So that work is all done as of this afternoon.
Does that, I might have missed something there, but does that mean that the playground could be opened up again, or is there a little bit work to be done yet?
The large playground. It can be opened up. I mean, we're gonna have some line striping going on in the basketball court area, four square, hopscotch, things like that on the asphalt surfacing. Without being on site today, I can't say what that asphalt area looks like, but I do know that the playground is reestablished, so the large playground can be reopened, and I believe the pre-K should have been reopened already.
It's open, yes. Kate,
So-
yeah.
Pre-K is open, but the large playground still has heavy equipment on it and several materials, and we still have the piles. So no, it would not be open from a school level for safer play. So I think what I would need is like the site work finished timeline, et cetera. And really just what the work schedule is. I think I'm struggling with what that is and what that looks like when I don't have someone on site, as I've had for the last few days. So if that could be shared with me, I'd appreciate it.
We can get you.
Okay, you have Kate's contact information?
Yep.
Yes, okay, great. Questions? Right, Ryan?
I guess the question I have about the large playground and the drainage is, so if I recall from past meetings, there was some dispute, particularly I think between TSKP and Newfield when it comes to whether the full extent of the material underneath the playground, if there was, whether the correct material was or wasn't installed, and based on what was exposed from recent events, it led to concern that maybe the right material wasn't in there. So this solution, the work that was just done that we're hearing now is complete. It's obviously limited in scope in terms of like it's a specific area. So it's kind of like a spot treatment or a spot fix. So just trying to understand, if things drain properly in the short term, that's great. That's one thing, but where do we stand, I guess, with the, or
Who's done it?
what information is there about where we stand, I guess, with the larger open question about what material was in there? I guess I'm looking for maybe Richard to start with that.
Yeah, so there are different specs for backfill material, drainage material, base material. And the biggest concern was drainage not working. And that detail that's shown on the Fuss and O'Neill is processed stone. That's been replaced with stone. And that I imagine is draining very well because it's just stone. I have not been to the site to see it drain, but if Newfield did that, I think it would be fine.
So just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, your position or TSKP's position is that if the work that Newfield's done now, if we have a few more storm events and things seem to be draining properly, in your mind, this is a settled issue?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, kitchen.
Yeah, so the kitchen work, that's all been scheduled with Lancaster. So the dishwasher repairs, the lock or handle that needs to be installed on the fridge there. And then as well as the roll down door, the pass-through window there, that will all be done on 8/17.
So 8/17 is still scheduled.
Yep, that's correct.
Great.
To add on to that, the food service director was reached out to so that either herself or her staff could be on site while they're doing it. So that way, once it's done, they can run the proverbial load of dishes or whatnot and be there in real time in case there are questions or concerns to avoid later issues just when someone's using it.
All right, heat pumps.
So the heat pumps, I believe, Norris and Ferreras has been on site a few times. Some of the control panel boards that are within the 3 heat pumps, I believe at least 2 have been replaced. I guess I would defer to Bill or Alan if they had any issues with those heat pumps still. We're gonna be having a commissioning meeting Monday morning, so we'll be discussing this further with Norris Ferreras and CES.
I still see alarms coming up for 23 and 26.
Those are the 2 that had the new boards put in.
Same as. All right, we'll talk to Sullivan Benson and make sure that Norris Ferreras is on the call, because if those are heat pumps that they've replaced the panel boards with, then it could be a programming issue or it could be something else.
So on number 23, all 3 circuit boards have been replaced and they continue to have a problem with it. And Andrew knows about it. And they're waiting for responses back from the factory.
Go ahead.
Are these the pumps that were affected by the lightning strike?
No.
No.
Nope, these
Okay.
have been locking out, failing since startup of the school.
Since when?
Start to school.
Oh, thank you.
Since we took occupancy of the school.
And circuit boards have been replaced all.
Yeah, there's 3 circuit boards. So there's 3 circuit boards and 1 heat pump, Bill, or just the 3?
Yes, there's 3 circuit boards in 1 heat pump.
Gotcha.
So they've been in place since the school was open, we're talking about in March.
Heat pumps have been messing up.
Yep, Bill, you're cutting out on us.
The last one was put in last week. Sorry.
So
Yeah.
Heat pump failure basically shuts down.
So I don't know what the lemon laws are around heat pumps, but you know, if you fix a car 3 times for the same problem, that's the definition of a lemon.
I know
And
Steve
I know-
has
Steve-
requested new units.
Right, yep,
okay, you have requested new units.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that's
I was at the meeting when he did it. That was a while ago. So the vendor has been working with the manufacturer, with the warehouse, the manufacturer to get them replaced, but they've been doing the incremental approach, it appears, where they just replace the circuit board rather than replace the whole thing, but they're running out of parts. So Steve's initial request to get it replaced becomes more and more prudent every second.
Okay. Domestic water spare VFDs. Wants to talk about that.
No update from Grundfos as to where the VFD that got affected in April. I don't believe we have an update on that. It's still a manufacturing issue. I know Highland Tank has reached out to them as well.
This is the resistance heaters?
No, the
These are the
VFD,
BFDs for the domestic water tank.
you want to suggest that?
Oh, for the supply, gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't know what else Ferguson can do either.
I just, you know,
I don't know, Bill or Alan, if you got other comments on that.
I gotta say, for what we thought was the lightning strike, we just replaced two of them. With that strike, we bought them and replaced them, so I'm not sure who's not supplying them, but somebody gave them to us.
So there's got to be a source out there somewhere.
yeah, no, I don't disagree. It seems like it's a ongoing saga. I mean, do we just provide a credit? Do you guys want the physical VFD or do we give you the value of the VFD from the sub?
I think either's okay, that's, we would probably just go back to where we got one and get one. So if we had the credit, we could do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, if it's from Sullivan Benson, we should definitely take the credit.
You have a question?
Have we started to talk about the water yet?
No.
Okay.
We want to,
there'll be a discussion offline.
Okay, so then additional grounding with the lightning strike. I don't know.
I'll take that one. So we reached out to, Kyler's reached out to some of the vendors from suggested by Cola Ronin. The estimated value is going to be well over 10,000, so that would need to go out to public bid. There was a question that came up from one of the initial discussions of the vendors in terms of what the scope needs to be. So I just got a clarification from Cola Ronin earlier today. So I'll work with the town procurement on getting a request for proposal out on the street for the actual final design and installation of that lightning protection and grounding scheme.
Okay, so we'll get more information on that. And then the last one on the list is the cafeteria acoustics, and then we'll talk about water.
Yeah, so after the last meeting, I reached out to Conwed, the manufacturer of the acoustic panels, to see if they could send someone to visually inspect the panels. And they referred me to their sales rep, who contacted me and said there's really, she doesn't know of a way to visually inspect and make a determination. And she recommended that they be tested in a laboratory. But in order for those panels to be tested in a laboratory, they'd have to be removed. And a fair amount of them would have to be removed because what she said is that the testing agency that is used by Conwed needs a section that is 8 feet by 9 feet. That's a fairly large panel that has to be shipped to an outfit called Riverbank Laboratories. And they're the ones that would actually do the test in a lab to see if the acoustic properties have been compromised. That's going to be expensive. And so I can't say that this is what you should do. There's some risk here. If you want to have the panels tested, we can work through the representative that I spoke with and have them receive those panels and send them to the laboratory to be done. But you're probably talking on the order of $5,000. And you have to wait for the test to be done and get a written report from the lab. Meantime, we have reached out to the acoustician that I contacted after the last meeting. That's Mark Reber. He's with Jaffe Holden. He has committed to come out on 2 different occasions. One before the school is occupied with pupils. He's going to be there next Monday and do a acoustics test to see what the conditions are. And then he'll come back in September when children are in the school having lunch, and then he'll do some additional readings at that time. He did say that he would look at the panels to see if he can't tell whether or not there's any acoustic compromise to the panels. So I suggest we wait until Mark Reber gets there next week. I can certainly meet with him. Jeff in my office can also meet with him. We can talk to him about what he saw, what measurements he took, and what suggestions he might make for improving the acoustic quality in that room. And in the classrooms as well. I know the classrooms are an issue too.
Right. Are there questions on that? I mean, it seems like a reasonable sort of workflow. Chris?
Richard, I don't know if these things exist. I kind of can't believe that they wouldn't, but I'm imagining that there's some sort of a instant read acoustic device, like an infrared thermometer that gets pointed at your forehead. And this thing does something with, like a bat, and sends out a signal and then receives it and sees what it comes back like. There must be one of those that these professionals have, whether or not it's certifiable or, all the fanciness that would make it actually, survive in court. I don't know, but I think it would be worth it if he has such a thing. And again, I can't believe there isn't such a thing, that you would ask him to bring it with and try it on that. And even if he did it if we had a sample of the stuff, which I believe we were being sent, and tested it against that, got a variation, you'd at least get some idea of what's going on or what isn't going on.
I will ask him that. He told me that he was going to bring his equipment, probably certified by the Department of Weights and Measures. I don't know who certifies them, but it would be an instrument that would be recognized in the acoustics industry. And he said that when the space is empty, he could pop balloons. That's what he said. So I said, what do you mean pop balloons? And he said, that's one of the
Balloons. Yeah.
one of the sophisticated instruments he uses to actually emit a sound and see if it's bouncing around the room.
Peter?
Just wondering, are any of the do we have any panels in the attic stock? Is there any of this material that hasn't been installed?
Excellent question. Bill, do you
No.
have any of these acoustic panels?
Bill or Ben, do you know?
No, no physical panels, for attic stock, only some, I believe fabric was what we turned over. No panels.
But even the fabric might be of use for discussion and Richard, when you have that expert on site, that may be some value to us.
Yep, I'll ask him.
Right, Kathy?
Just curious, this might have come up already, Richard or Jeff. Have you had other buildings with concerns like this about acoustics? Other
Yes.
projects?
Yes, and sometimes we do have to provide supplemental acoustic treatment in order to solve them.
So this is not a strange thing that we have to deal with. This is something that's fairly commonplace.
Yes, the issue of acoustics is, although it's a science and it's measurable, there's the occupant use of it. There's the expectations that might be different by different users. So we very often have to come back. I wouldn't say very often, but occasionally we do have to come back and make some modifications to it in order to improve the acoustics.
Okay, so this is doable. Okay, thank you.
It is doable, yes.
Chris? And then Chris Kiefer and then McNamara.
I'm just thinking, Richard or Jeff, that you might have a job right now that spec the same material. If you got it for us, maybe you liked it enough to get it somewhere else. So maybe it's on another job, not too far from us.
We can find out. I'll talk to the other project teams here if we have the Conwed panels on another project. I can find out.
Okay, Chris McNamara.
And the other thing that could be done, to talk to Kathy's point, is to put panels on the ceiling. And I know that we have a nice wooden ceiling there that people probably don't want to cover up, but if the bottom line is to get the right acoustics, there's a lot of glass in that place, and that might be the remedy to do it, and might be the easiest to make that change.
I agree, Chris. We actually talked about that in-house here. And then the question is, how much is required on the ceiling. It would be nice to reveal the ceiling, but also it would be nice if necessary to put panels on the ceiling if that helps, and it probably will, to create a kind of aesthetically pleasing but very acoustically effective strategy. Yes, we've talked about that in-house here. And once we have Mark Reaver on the site, we'll discuss those things with him.
Okay. All right, so that concludes this list of topics. There is a question. I know Tony's interested about the water treatment and the water quality and that kind of stuff, which is going to come up as part of the PCO discussion. So maybe we can jump to that since it's next on the agenda anyway.
Yes, and I'll bring that one up first. Are you looking at the PDF of
New
this?
England Water, yeah.
Yep, perfect. So I'll give it the high level overview and then maybe Bill or Alan can jump in if need be. But effectively, this proposal, it's for $19,750, is for the actual design, if you will, of the additional water treatment for the copper. So this would contemplate actually going through analyzing the system and coming up with the town should buy XYZ. It does not include the actual cost of that system. Some initial discussions with CT Water have indicated that would probably be on the order of 10,000 plus or minus some amount, but it's not 100,000 and it's not 1,000. So that's what the proposal is put forth before the committee for that work. I don't know what Tony's question was, but this is the topic up for tonight.
So my question is there a problem that with the water that needs to be treated? Is it a problem with the pipe that needs to be treated? There are a couple of ways of dealing with this. There's a way of dealing with the actual copper ions in the water. There's a way of dealing with the pipe, and there's a way of dealing with the water source. It depends on what the problem actually is. Does anybody know yet?
But this is Alan. I can tell you that the problem is not in the source water. The problem comes out at the faucet. So it's the copper is releasing some of its copper into the system after gets to the building. So this system, or what they're looking at, is an option to coat the inside of the pipe so that the copper won't release anymore and you won't get the copper in the water. So they're looking at something like a phosphate or phosphonate to coat the pipes.
Permanent solution, or is it something that you have to keep running constantly?
It would be a constant feed chemical system. So it'd have to feed, but it would meant to be a permanent solution for the system. And their part of their proposal is to get that application into the state, get it through the state, and then to install the equipment, but it does not cover the price of the equipment.
And what does the state have to do with it?
The state DPH in particular has to approve whatever the recommendation is.
Thank you.
Yeah, the state gets the water reports all the time.
Randy?
Steve, Ryan and Steve, and then
Yeah, just
Chris Kiefer.
I guess just a couple more quick comments on this, because I know Peter and I have been on a number of these calls with the state and trying to wrap our heads around different options. So I'm certainly not a subject matter expert, but just to, because I know people who haven't been on all these calls, you might be wondering, well, what are the options? Are there alternatives to a whole system treatment? Because, if we have really wonderful source water, it's kind of a bummer, right, to be chemically treating it if you don't have to. But at the end of the day, while there are potentially some other options, and the point of distribution filters that we have in there, they seem to be doing the job in terms of the sampling that we've taken directly from those point of use filters. At the end of the day, there's still a concern, even if we are able to serve water in the building that, you know, is well below the actionable level of copper, that might satisfy the public health concern. But at the end of the day, if we have a lot of copper, if the corrosiveness of the water is unchecked, the pipes themselves will break down much more rapidly. And then you're talking about replumbing the building sooner. So it's not just a matter of the public health standpoint, it's also the integrity of the pipes and the life expectancy of the pipes. So that's one argument for doing a whole system approach, because you actually protect your investment in the pipes and you're not replacing the pipes sooner than you otherwise would. And then the second thing, and this is something that I want to give, you know, Derek Delay, our assistant town engineer, credit for pointing out, is right now, and we hope certainly, you know, we have no reason to expect there's going to be other issues other than the copper that's leaching out of these new pipes. But if there ever was another environmental contaminant, let's say there's something that unexpectedly down the road impacted the source water, you know, a contaminant that came in from off-site, having a whole system water treatment option right now, we would be treating with the orthophosphate to kind of bind to the pipes. But if we had a contaminant to be named later that came along, having this system in place would allow us to very nimbly add a new chemical to address that. So basically, it just kind of gives us a leg up. It's sort of an insurance policy. So it's just, these are things that I think we have to consider. So.
Steve, you have a question?
So is the copper coming out of the plumbing because of the parameters of the water? It's acidic or it's bait, whatever?
One of the questions I keep asking, and I guess justifies a very simple explanation. As I understand it, corrosivity, the corrosive nature of the water, it's a function of a few different parameters, and how acidic or basic water is definitely one of it. So acidity is definitely a factor. It does not sound, though, like our water is particularly acidic. So we're being told that it's corrosive, or I'm not sure if it's right, it's correct to say highly corrosive, but it's sufficiently corrosive, maybe above average corrosive, that it's causing this leaching, accelerated leaching. But I don't believe it's particularly acidic water. So I've asked now, probably every call we've been on, and there's been several of these, what exactly is making our water corrosive if it's not the acidity? And I'm being told, well, corrosivity is a function of a variety of factors. Yes, I get that. But what in our case is causing it? And I just have not gotten really an answer. So our water apparently is somewhat corrosive, over a little extra corrosivity. Does not seem to be driven by the acidity. And we're also being told that the original, when the wells were drilled and they originally came online and they were commissioned and there were completion reports and all these parameters were taken, it seems as though the corrosivity of the water today and the samples we're taking today is higher than it was back when the well originally came online. And we're also being told that's not totally unusual. They're not necessarily saying it's more common than not, but that seems to be our experience. And so if you're wondering, like I was, well, when the wells were drilled and we took the original, couldn't we have predicted this? I guess that answer is somewhat unclear.
Alan or Bill, I don't know if you have anything else to add about the water.
No, I think Ryan characterized that pretty well, and I can tell you our readings are, I think, like 7.8 on the pH scale. So for the ones of you that know what that means,
Yeah,
but
it's slightly basic.
Yeah, you want to be closer to 7 typically. So
Do we need another quote? I mean, $20,000 for a $10,000 system seems a little excessive. And I believe it's the town's hiring or procurement policy. If it's over 10, we're supposed to get multiple bids. Is there another person we can go to that could design this?
Adam is like, this is the firm.
That's a question for Alan and Bill. This has been under the town's existing contract with CT Water and New England Water as part of that. So that's how if you recall, there was a task order from the same firm signed a while back for some of the analysis and study. And so it was just done underneath the town's existing contract with them as a change to that as part of their, large breadths of services that they do. So in terms of alternative providers, that's something that Alan and Bill would need to weigh in on in terms of what would be acceptable, amenable, make sense, et cetera.
we think the price would probably be roughly the same. And you'd probably have to get a company that would have to spend a little time doing some of the background figuring that they've already done here. But We also, because this comes under a professional service, and it's just underneath the 20,000 mark, I think we're okay to still go with this company.
Okay. Chris?
How critical is this? Adam, you're controlling the document, right? Can you raise it up a little bit? I see the bullet points. Raise it. That's it. Here they go. It doesn't seem like any of these things are very exotic. And it seems as if, to me, the system, I mean, maybe Bill and Ellen know, well, we want this, or we're going to need this system. And I wouldn't be surprised if these guys have seen this kind of problem before. I mean, the professionals here, the Connecticut Water, and they know what the answer is. So we're spending $20,000 to be told that we need to spend 10 that we already know we're going to need to spend. I mean, how fancy, sophisticated, precise will the treatment system be when we already know so much about the problem? And I don't understand why we need to spend $20,000 to have them tell us which of the choices we should take should be.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of this is that part of it. It does include the application to the state. The state needs a response because we have a violation. So that process in itself is pretty lengthy, and getting that application into the state. And then from there, it also is including the install of the equipment that we would still be on the hook to buy the equipment. So those are probably the bigger components of this, but getting that report together is a big part.
But for $20,000.
Yeah, I don't know, like I said, we could definitely go out the bid on this and see what we get. That is.
Well, I'm not even interested in that so much as, is it really information that we can't get otherwise, or we don't already know? That's what it feels like. It feels like it's stuff we already know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of knowns here. I don't think there is a lot of, it's to put together those knowns into a report for the state, really. It's not that they're gonna be discovering a lot more here, because I think we've already looked at everything for the most part. It's coming down to, do you do phosphonate or soda ash? I guess is another option that they might propose. And then getting the state to approve it.
Thanks.
How difficult a process is it to install? I would assume that's got to be at least a couple $1,000s as part of that.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the case. It's going to be getting some pumps, and you're going to have to pipe off to where the water flows through this system first and then flows back, and you have to install monitoring for that, because you have to watch the level that you're putting in and then get pumps that meter it in.
Chris McNamara?
I kind of agreeing with Chris Kiefner at this point. I mean, sending a report into the state can't cost us that much. And I don't know, Alan, do you feel comfortable sending that report in yourself, and let's just get this thing installed? We'll pay, Weston and Sampson for some installation and startup for the system.
I believe the requirement is that they do have another party look at this system that has certain qualifications. So I think, we could take this scope and then bid it and then see what we get, because there are other companies that do this kind of work. So I can't tell you that this is like a fantastic price for this thing. So I would think it would be well for us to probably bid it out and then see what we get.
How long will that take?
Usually we give it about 3 weeks.
I think that actually is going to cost us money too, in staff time and work and advertising and all that kind of stuff. I say, if we can't negotiate this price down, we just go with it, get it over with, get going.
Just want to.
But you didn't say that on public record, did you?
Go ahead, Peter. Okay, Peter.
Just wanted to add, timing is critical, but at the same time, we have a mitigating plan in place that will allow us to open up on time. So it's not dependent on startup time. We know this is going to take some time. I see both arguments and I'm okay with it. I too am surprised at the cost. But it is what it is. And it, it's something that we're obligated to do regardless whether we have a good plan for safe water for our kids. The state is still going to require us to notify families every month that we have exceeded copper levels in our water system, and that they will require a plan to mitigate the copper level. So, so we're okay to open up. It's really a matter of how quickly the school building committee wants this to move forward, but we're still looking at mid to late in the school year, probably, of when we could actually switch over to the system.
That was my question. I wanted Peter's take if we need to expedite this or not.
So, our families have been very good about sending bottled water. We will still have the filtration stations that are open. They've been doing a marvelous job, and it's a wonder why that can't be part of the solution, but I kind of get it. And we'll still provide bottled water for the kitchen and key areas in the building.
Okay. All right, Tony?
I'm going to make the motion because I really think that that we're not going to save more than a couple $1,000s. And at this point, it's not worth it. And every time we send out a notice to parents, it's a bad thing. So I move to approve the quote for water treatment equipment design and implementation from New England Water Utility Services, CT Water, per their quote in the amount of $19,750.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Is there a second? Mary seconds that. Any final comments? Ryan?
I just don't know if there must be consideration for slightly amending the motion to say for an amount up to. It would still then allow us an opportunity. I mean, we are talking about this in a public forum, so it.
Thank you. I'd like to make that motion and ask for a second.
I would accept it as a friendly amendment to the motion I made.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
Then all in favor of the motion, please indicate. Okay, and then all opposed? I see Chris and Chris. Okay. All right, so the motion then passes. Okay, thanks. And then Adam, we have a PCO as well.
Yes, PCO 197. This is a cleanup PCO from some work a while back. This is for $232.23. Basically, there was some offsite testing of soil that needed to occur that the soils contractor helped with actually getting the soil samples from the pile. So this soil was tested, it was all fine. This is just for their work to actually move the buckets of soil over.
Okay, Tony.
I'm ready to move approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve PCO 197.
I move to approve PCO 197 dated 8/7/2023 in the amount of $232.23 for prior earthwork to facilitate additional soil testing.
Okay, and I saw Chris Keekner put up his second. Any other questions? Then all in favor of the motion, please indicate. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, so that's unanimous. Okay, then that brings us. Nothing else you have, Adam, right?
Correct.
Okay, then. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
For Peter, I guess, is there anything that you're concerned with? We need to get ready for school to open in 3 weeks?
Well, I think I share this with Kate. It's really the playground. It's the kitchen. Get those two things buttoned up. And I think the other things will fall in place. But while I have the floor, I sent out invitations to our convocation. I hope the school building committee will seriously consider being a part of our celebration. We're hosting it at MES as a showcase piece. We're proud of the building. And in spite of all the challenges that we talk about here, a day doesn't go by that we don't celebrate this amazing facilities. I had some guests from Hartford who are heading into some renovations. They were taking pictures and just amazed at what we've done. So please don't lose sight of the good work and the human capital side of it. We have strong kids and families and staff members. And so I think if we push to have that playground open and the kitchen resolved, then pretty much we're good to go.
And
Okay.
not to be glib about the kitchen, but just because this is the way things have gone, we're confident that the kitchen folks have the inventory in stock. It's not going to be a shipping delay thing, or we don't have it. We're waiting for it. Like we're good to go for the 17th.
We're good to go.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And we're good to run more than just one proverbial load through? Because part of the problem before was the backup, when you have all of those kids eating lunch, you know. We want to make sure that we don't duplicate that.
Yes, that's what
Snafu.
the discussion with Mariah was, the food service director, they feel confident that it works when the vendor leaves.
Good. If Mariah says she's confident, then
Okay.
we agree.
Okay. Then with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Mary, and then second from Tony. And all in favor, indicate, and we'll see you next time. Thank you all.
Thank you, Randy.